Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. The time has finally arrived. We have my Game Week 1 team selection, and if you're excited for the start of the FPL season, please do smash that like button. Let's aim for 3,000 likes on today's video, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, before we jump into the video, can I just ask you to do one favor for me? If you've not yet subscribed to the channel and you're watching this right now, please do consider subscribing. I would really appreciate the support. It's completely free for you to do, but it does massively support me, and we are trying to hit 80,000 subscribers before Game Week 1. But let's take a look at the team. I am happy with a lot of it, and most of the team hasn't really changed. The general structure is roughly the same. But there are a few places that I'm currently still deciding between certain players, and that man, Mohamed Salah, is really making it quite difficult for me because I pretty much disregarded him for most of pre-season. But all of a sudden, pretty good pre-season form, a little bit of FOMO too. I kind of want Salah in my team as well. So my first team that I'm going to present to you is the team that I currently have. It doesn't have Salah in it. And at the end of the video, I do have a Salah draft just to show you if I do end up bringing him in, this is probably the team that I will end up going with. As you can see at the moment, I am lining up in a 3-5-2. I do think there's probably the best formation just due to the amount of good midfielders that they are. I don't really like the 4-5-1 because I feel like it limits you with respect to flexibility for moving to other forwards. So at the moment, 3-5-2 feels like the best combination of everything for me. And you can see the big thing is I have 2.5 million in the bank. There is a very obvious place to spend that money, as we'll discuss when we move on to the forward section. However, I'm not really keeping it just for that specific purpose. I'm perfectly happy going into the season with 2.5 in the bank. I know a lot of people won't like that, but it gives you so much flexibility to upgrade, I don't know, from like a Chilwell to a Trent, or from one of my midfielders to try and get up to the likes of a KDB if he starts to look really good. So I'm not necessarily keeping that for a specific purpose, but I don't feel like you need to spend the full 100 million. Let's move on to the team then. So in defense, or let's start with the goalkeepers, I should say, I've currently got Pickford and Turner. This is one of the major headaches that I have at the moment, is the goalkeeping position. I like Pickford, I like Johnston, and I like Onana. I haven't really moved off those three. I do like Emi Martinez, and maybe once we get one of Ramsdale and Raya that are starting regularly, they look good too. But for me, it's Pickford or Johnston at the 4.5, or do I want to cover that Manchester United defence for 5 million? Now, I am a Manchester United fan. I'm just not convinced by us defensively, both in pre-season and at points last season as well. And I think just playing Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes will really help us in the attack. I expect us to score more goals this season, but I don't necessarily think we'll be that stable defensively, at least at first. I look at the fixtures as well to open the season for Manchester United. I'm not convinced in those opening 5 or 6 fixtures we get more than 1 or 2 clean sheets. It is backing against a very heavily owned defence. A lot of people have Onana, a lot of people have Luke Shaw. If Manchester United do keep a lot of clean sheets, I could be in trouble. And obviously with Lopetegui leaving, Wolves at home in the opening day looks absolutely brilliant for a clean sheet. But I just feel like Pickford and Johnston will make more saves. I prefer the fixtures over the first sort of 6 to 8 game weeks. And I just feel like that extra 0.5 could be useful at another point. I know I already have 2.5, or I already have 2 in the bank, but that 0.5 can be quite useful. I'm going back and forth on Pickford versus Johnston. I think Pickford will make slightly more saves, but I think Everton are the slightly worse defence, and that's probably why he'll make more saves. So maybe less clean sheets for Pickford. But I also prefer the fixtures for Pickford. So I'm looking at probably slightly more saves, slightly better fixtures for Pickford, but the slightly better defence is Johnston. And of course, you do need the goalkeeper to keep clean sheets. So I'm going back and forth on those. The great thing about both Pickford and Johnston is they rotate very, very nicely with Turner. He's just got his move to Nottingham Forest. He's not yet at Nottingham Forest in the game. At the time of me recording this, he's still at Arsenal. But he's a £4 million goalkeeper. He should, for the time being, be Nottingham Forest's first choice goalkeeper, but they are still trying to sign Dean Henderson. And if Dean Henderson comes in at the back end of the window around sort of game week 3, game week 4, it could well be that at that point, Turner becomes their second choice, and all of a sudden you don't have a playing goalkeeper. But for the time being, Pickford and Turner rotate really nicely, and Johnston and Turner rotate really nicely too. I would love to know down below in the comments, who do you currently have in goal? Is it one of those two, or are you potentially considering someone else? At the moment, I'll stick with Pickford. The back three has been unchanged for a while now, but the thing that I love about this draft, and one thing that I really wanted to show you because I've taken a bit of time to do the research around this, is the rotation with that back three. So Chilwell, Estepinian, Gabriel, all home fixtures in the opening game week. And they all have some attacking threat as well. Gabriel doesn't have the best stats, but he does have some decent goal threat. Estepinian's creativity was quite good last year, and he's looked to get good again in pre-season, getting a couple of assists. And Chilwell has looked so attacking in pre-season too. These are 3 players that I think will play for very good defences this year. Chelsea, Brighton, and Arsenal are all really solid defensively, and I expect Chelsea in particular to improve. and they'll add really decent numbers. So that back three will start for me in most weeks. But there are some game weeks where Estepinian and Gabriel in particular have some pretty tricky fixtures, and you want to be able to, if you want to at least, rotate them out potentially with some of your bench options. So at the moment, as you can see, I currently have Botman and Udogie on the bench. I'll start with Botman. I didn't think he would be anywhere near my draft, but I've actually realised in future weeks when Estepinian and Gabriel have tricky fixtures, Botman has excellent fixtures. Newcastle, we know, will continue to be a really solid defence. They were so good last season, second best in the league for expected goals conceded. Botman, I don't need for the opening 4, 5, 6 weeks, but when I do need him to come in, he's the perfect player for me, and you know he's going to be relatively nailed in that Newcastle team. Udogie as well. All of the fixtures where Estepinian has a tricky fixture, Udogie rotates perfectly. So I'm going to jump over to Fantasy Football Hub and show you that rotation right now. So very briefly, I just wanted to show you why I like that back five so much of Estepinian, Gabriel and Chilwell. I'm currently using the My Team feature over at Fantasy Football Hub. If you do want access to this, you can get 50% off at the moment for as little as £3 per month. You can get access to pretty much everything over on the site, including this, Opta statistics, loads of other stuff. So in game weeks 1, 2, and 3, as you can see, I would play Chilwell, Gabriel, Estepinian. I don't feel a need to not play them. I feel like they've got good fixtures. And as I say, I've picked them for a reason. They're playing in good defences with good attacking data. Going into game week 4, you can see I've brought Udogie into the team because Gabriel's got Manchester United. I may well want to play Gabriel, but Udogie against Burnley is a much better fixture. And with the attacking threat that I believe he will have, because I think he will be excellent for Postecoglou at Spurs, I think Udogie could be really nice there. Also got Chilwell against Forest. Estepinian got a slightly tricky fixture. I could play Gabriel if I want to. Going into game week 5, you can see I can play Udogie against Sheffield United at home because in this week, Estepinian's got Manchester United away. I also have the option of Botman against Brentford at home. I'm not going to go through every single week, but you can see there is a nice rotation. And the weeks in particular that I think you wouldn't want to play Estepinian and Gabriel is probably going to be game week 8 and game week 9. Because in game week 8, Estepinian and Gabriel have Man City and Liverpool. And in that week, you can play Udogie against Luton and Botman against West Ham. And then in game week 9, you can see Botman against Crystal Palace, Udogie against Fulham. In that week, Estepinian's got Man City and Gabriel's got Chelsea. So the weeks where you don't want to play some of your back line, specifically probably Gabriel and Estepinian, because Chilwell's, we think, going to be so attacking, you probably want to play him in every fixture. In those weeks, if you want to, or you want to have the option, Udogie and Botman work really, really well. And that's why at the moment, that's my current back five. And I don't currently have a £4 million defender. So after discussing the 5 defenders, and hopefully something a little bit different there, because I know the rest of the team and everyone's team is fairly template, but hopefully that little rotation is just something that you haven't heard, because I did the research myself, so something a little bit different there. Unfortunately, the midfield 5 is not particularly different, but again, I don't feel like we should use the word template in a dirty way. I don't feel like we should pick players just because of ownership. I feel like you just pick the players that you think will do well, and the fact that it's a template midfield is probably because it means that they are good players to pick. I do have the double Arsenal midfield and the double Manchester United midfield. I'll start with the one that I'm slightly more confident on, which is the double Manchester United midfield. I think both Rashford and Fernandes are excellent options. We've spoken about this to death in pre-season. Rashford's goal threat was excellent last season. Whether playing on the left or playing through the centre, his XG was very, very good. His expected assists relatively low. And then for Fernandes, we've got the exact opposite. Fernandes' expected goals weren't very good from open play, but his expected assists were absolutely excellent, one of the best in the league. So with Fernandes, you have an elite creator. And with Rashford, if you can replicate what we saw last season, you've got a very, very good goal threat. I would still maintain that if I'm to only have one, and of course, if I have my Salah draft, which I'll show you at the end of the video, then I will only have one. It is going to be Marcus Rashford for me because you want your players to score goals at the end of the day. Yes, assists are great. Yes, you can still get bonus points with assists, but you get more points for goals. You get better bonus points for goals too. And across the season, it does tally up. So I think that Marcus Rashford is the better pick, even with the extra 0.5. I'm just struggling to choose one at the moment. I don't want to drop Bruno, so in most of my drafts, I have both Rashford and Fernandes. Just on Fernandes, the thing that I love about him so much this season as well, I know he's going to be playing maybe a little bit deeper now that Mason Mount has signed, but with this new rule coming in and there being extra minutes every single game, Bruno Fernandes barely ever comes off the pitch. So he's going to be on the pitch all the time, and there are quite a few last-minute penalties as well. So Bruno's going to be on the pitch for longer, have more minutes and potential opportunities to get penalties too, and he's a very good penalty taker as well. So it's maybe just a little additional thing to add to Bruno Fernandes that makes him a great option. And last season, I feel like he underperformed his expected data quite significantly. If he can just up that slightly and perform close to what he accumulates with his expected data, he's quite comfortably a 200-point plus player. So I do really like Bruno, and Bruno's one of the main reasons that I don't want to go for Salah, because I just don't want to lose him. It might be a bit of Manchester United bias. Let me know down below if you think that's the case. I just love Bruno as an option, and I want him in my team. Saka, I'm very comfortable on. I know a lot of people are saying that they don't think Saka will be on penalties because Ødegaard's penalty looked better in the Community Shield or something like that. And because he's the captain, maybe that is the case and maybe he won't be. But all we have the information on is that Saka is still on penalties. So until we see something that is against that case, I would say that we believe Saka is still on pens. He's also probably the most nailed attacker for Arsenal, maybe even more nailed than Ødegaard. We might see a bit more rotation this year, but I like the expected minutes. I like the probable penalties. He's on a couple of set pieces too sometimes. And he's also excellent at home. And Arsenal have some really good home fixtures to open. As we've spoken about on various occasions in pre-season, Saka does need to improve his away data and his away output as well. He's not very good away from home, but at home he's absolutely exceptional. And I feel like they have underpriced him this year. So Saka for me has been locked in pretty much all of my drafts. The other two spots I am significantly less sure on, Martinelli and Mbeumo, the two M's. We'll start with Martinelli. Something just doesn't feel quite right with Martinelli. I can't quite pinpoint what it is. Let me know down below if you feel this same way. I'm trying to not let the Community Shield affect me too much because he dropped a bit of a stinker, but it was against Manchester City and they're playing Nottingham Forest at home, who themselves had a pretty poor pre-season. It just something just doesn't feel quite right. And I don't know if it's me trying to be different or wanting to just go for a slightly differential option in there, but there are so many nice midfielders to choose from. I'm just wondering, is that Martinelli spot the place that I can take a risk? If I'm not convinced by Martinelli, I probably wouldn't go for Ødegaard, despite him being a good option. I could put a number of really nice players in there. And if I'm not convinced by Martinelli, maybe that's the place that I can take a bit of a risk and differentiate slightly. Not that you need to, but just to add a little bit of fun to it. His data is good. I still expect him to start most games for Arsenal, but with Trossard there, with Havertz there, obviously Declan Rice can even play the Xhaka role, which pushes most of the other options further forward. Once Jesus is back, that's additional rotation. Obviously, Nketiah is there too. Most of these players, Smith Rowe as well, most of these players don't play on the left, but it just adds extra competition. And we have seen Trossard on quite a few occasions come on for Martinelli quite early. So we'll have to wait and see. At the moment, he is in my draft. The player that I would probably have in that Martinelli spot, if I dropped Martinelli out, is one of two players. The first is Ollie Watkins, who isn't in my draft. Spoiler alert for the forwards. I could bring Ollie Watkins in for Martinelli and simply have a 3-4-3, exactly the same money in the bank, exactly the same squad value. I just only have 4 midfielders. The other option, which I slightly prefer, is James Maddison. If you remember at the start of pre-season, James Maddison was in most of my drafts. I like him at 7.5. If Kane stays, I think Spurs will score a hell of a lot of goals. And potentially even if Kane doesn't stay, I still expect Spurs to do very well. So those are probably the two options. I could maybe lean towards Foden if we get news that he starts in game week 1, but it's probably James Maddison or Watkins. So let me know down below, out of those 3 players, Martinelli, Watkins, James Maddison, who do you prefer? And then the 5th and final midfielder is Mbeumo. He probably is still my favourite £6.5 million midfielder. He does have a flag at the moment, but it looks like he's been in full training, so I would expect him to start. He is on penalties. He's on quite a few set pieces as well, mainly corners, and his data is very strong. We just don't know exactly how Brentford will look for a longer sample size because we saw it a couple of times last season without Ivan Toney in the team, and it does worry me slightly. And I just think, should you go for the maybe safer someone like I don't know, Matoma, who's going to have very high ownership, really nice fixtures over the first 3? Or do I just back myself and say, I've always thought Mbeumo is the best 6.5, just go for him? Of course, the other player that is really making me want to put him into the team is Eze. I think Eze is talismanic. He's on free kicks, corners, penalties too, and he will play pretty much every minute under Hodgson. From game week 29, I think it was, last season, when Hodgson came in, Eze played every minute available, didn't come off the pitch at any point, started every game. So Eze is really in my thinking too. I could even put Eze in for Martinelli and I would have 4 million in the bank. Not that I necessarily need that, but I have that option as well. So that is the midfield. I would say Rashford and Saka locked. Fernandes is locked, assuming I don't have Salah, because if I have Salah, Fernandes has to come out. And Mbeumo is still my favourite 6.5. It's probably that Martinelli spot, one of Maddison, Watkins, or potentially Eze, I suppose, if I want to save a little bit more money. Let's move on to the forwards and discuss the team in its entirety. So guys, moving on to the 2 forwards, I do have Erling Haaland, of course. Everyone's got Erling Haaland. I don't feel like there's a necessity to try and beat everyone at the start by not having Erling Haaland. If you want to go without him, absolutely go for it. But I feel like if you want Kane or if you want Salah, as I've shown on Twitter on various occasions, and as I'll show at the end of this video with a Salah draft, you can have one of them plus Haaland, and I feel like that's probably the better bet than going without Haaland and trying to have Kane and Salah in instead. I don't think you can have all 3 and have a balanced enough team for me. It just doesn't feel like it's worth going without Haaland for now. I do think if you go for Salah, you captain Salah in game week 2, by the way, but I don't feel like there's a necessity in game week 1 to go against Haaland, and I think I'm going to have him in my... Well, I know I'm going to have him in my team, and I'm pretty sure I'll captain him too. The other forward spot is pretty tricky. So at the moment, I've got João Pedro. Do you prefer João Pedro with 2.5 in the bank, Jackson with 1 in the bank, or Watkins with nothing in the bank? I think, obviously, if you're looking at expected minutes and also sort of safety of returns and reliability, Ollie Watkins is probably your guy. And if you were to ask me to give you advice, which I will be doing in tomorrow's video, I'll be rating your drafts, and also in the deadline stream as well. We will be streaming 2.5 hours before the Game Week 1 deadline, right up to the deadline as well. So do tune into both that video and that stream as well. I would probably tell you to get Watkins. It's the safe, reliable pick. He's good for returns. He's looked very good under Emery. His data's been good. He could still be on penalties, and you know he's going to be on the pitch for pretty much every second. So I like him for all of those reasons. I guess it's a bit of sort of shiny new toy syndrome with João Pedro and Jackson, that they just feel a little bit more exciting. I think João Pedro in particular, as you can see, is currently in my draft, probably on penalties because he took a penalty ahead of Pascal Gross in pre-season. Got decent data when he played in the Prem before. And also I think Brighton attack fairly well. And I love the fixtures over the opening few for João Pedro. And it also gives me ultimate flexibility because I've got so much money in the bank. Yes, there is a very good chance that I end up needing to sell João Pedro around Game Week 4. But let's say I don't. Let's say he starts really well and he's absolutely nailed and his minutes look really good, which I don't think they probably will. But let's say all of these things happen. I then have 2.5 to spend elsewhere. I can maybe bring Trent in if I need to. Or I can stretch to a Heung-min Son if he looks really good. I've got all of these different options in my team that I wouldn't necessarily have if I start with Watkins. And that flexibility is really nice. But the real issue with João Pedro is we just don't know how secure his minutes are. Enciso is, of course, going to provide rotation at the number 10. You've got Matoma on the left. And then up top, you've got Welbeck and Ferguson. I do expect most of João Pedro's minutes to come in that 10 role. And so it's probably Enciso that's the direct threat. But you've also got Kudus that's coming in, likely for Brighton as well. That provides some more rotation. So maybe João Pedro is just too much of a minutes risk. Yes, he feels like a great option at 5.5. But is it worth taking the risk ahead of a Watkins? I mean, I'm almost talking myself out of it live in the video and just trying to remind myself to be sensible. But I like the idea of the João Pedro plus 2.5. And then just a word on Jackson. I still expect him to do very well for Chelsea. The thing that has put me off Jackson is Nkunku's injury. I probably would have had Nkunku, but I do feel like Nkunku being out probably makes Jackson a worse option. His running was excellent in pre-season. He created the space for Jackson to score goals. So even if Nkunku wasn't directly assisting Jackson, I feel like just his movement off the ball and the space that he creates was really, really valuable for him. So I'm slightly put off of Jackson for that reason. So realistically for me, it is probably between João Pedro and Watkins, but I would love to know your opinion on it down below. So that is the team. Just to summarize, the positions where I'm a little bit unsure and I could still change because I am human and I could well change right up until the deadline, as can any FPL manager really, is Pickford, Johnston, Onana. I don't know which of those three keepers I'll end up on. That Martinelli spot, I am tempted to go for one of Maddison, Watkins in there, if I want to go for João Pedro. So I could do Martinelli to Watkins, or potentially Eze. And then that is that João Pedro spot there. If I don't do Martinelli to Watkins, I could do João Pedro to Watkins as well. So I guess I really, to summarize, need to think about if I want Watkins in my team. If I do, then I'll either have to drop Martinelli or upgrade João Pedro. And then the final thing I need to think about is, do I want Mohamed Salah in my team? Because if I do, then I, of course, can bring him in, but I would have to sacrifice elsewhere. We're going to take a look at the Salah draft in a second. Just a quick note to say that this team is rated at 95% according to Fantasy Football Hub and predicted to get 65.5 points. If you want to get your team rated for free by the AI, you can do so by clicking the first link in the description, completely free. Get your team rating. Let me know what your rating is down below in the comments as well. I also just wanted to show you that you can get AI recommended transfers as well if you sign up as a paying member. It's about £3 a month. Not a lot, but if you want to do it, it does support me, and I also think it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to show you what the AI recommends that I do with my team. Of course, it becomes more useful throughout the season. They recommend firstly that I change Pickford for Steele. They think the Brighton double up will be worthwhile doing over the first 5 game weeks, and this is a projection over the first 5 game weeks, no longer than that. Maybe I'm thinking a little bit longer term than the AI, I suppose, but I personally prefer Pickford. Not sure about the double up myself. They recommend doing Chilwell to Stones, and I can understand this because the fixtures are great for City, best defence in the league, and I do think John Stones is a great option in and of himself. And then they also recommend that I use that 2.5 million in the bank. As you can imagine, they want me to optimise my points to go from João Pedro to Watkins. I've listed the reasons that I like João Pedro, but you know I like Watkins as well, and I could well end up doing exactly what the AI is suggesting. Like I said, if you do want access to this, there is a link down below for 50% off as little as £3 per month. It's probably worth doing across the season, but if not, at least get your team rating for free. So as I said at the start of the video, I did just want to show you a Salah draft, just in case I do end up changing and you can't tune into the deadline stream for whatever reason, but please do tune in because it will be an absolute classic and I'm very much looking forward to it. I just wanted to show you what my Salah draft could look like. And if you do want a Salah draft, I think this is along the lines of what I would probably suggest. I've deliberately tried keeping as much of this draft the same as my previous one because, as I said, I am confident and comfortable with most of my picks. So there are actually only 3 changes between my Salah draft and my non-Salah draft. And this is the second biggest thing that I need your help with in this video. Let me know, do you prefer the non-Salah draft or the Salah draft? The 3 changes are, I've got them next to me, Baldock, Eze, and Salah come in for Botman, Martinelli, and Fernandes. To be honest, you can probably ignore the Baldock Botman because I've left 0.5 here. I could quite conceivably just have Botman on the bench rather than Baldock. So that doesn't really matter. So basically, the big decision, Eze and Salah versus Martinelli and Bruno Fernandes. That is pretty much it. Of course, it is worth noting that the previous draft would have 2.5 million in the bank rather than 0.5. So you're saving 2 million by going for the Martinelli and Fernandes option. But obviously this one does have Mohamed Salah. So I would love to know what you think. I'll just briefly say that I do like that Eze and Salah has 2 confirmed penalty takers, pretty much anyway, whereas Bruno Fernandes and Martinelli is only 1 penalty taker. I would say that for minutes as well, Salah and Eze is better for minutes than Bruno and Martinelli because I think Bruno, Eze and Salah are all nailed, whereas Martinelli will get a few early subs. So there are quite a few things that I like about this. And again, captaincy in Game Week 2, you have Salah captain against Bournemouth at home. So I could definitely be convinced to go for the Salah draft, and I'm sure on the deadline stream, I'll be an absolute panicked mess and probably be switching back and forth between whether I want Salah or not. At the moment, I would say I'm probably 60-40 in favour of the previous draft without Salah, and the only reason for that is I feel like it provides more flexibility. I have a better option in the bench with Botman rather than Baldock, and I have an extra 2 million in the team. And I have 2 better price points in the midfield. Rather than having a really expensive midfielder and then Eze, I've got an 8 million and I've also got my 8.5 in Bruno Fernandes. I could quite easily just go for Eze in the previous draft, and then the real difference is quite a bit in the bank versus Salah versus Bruno. But I feel like for ease of trying to explain this, it's Eze and Salah versus Martinelli and Fernandes. At the moment, I slightly prefer draft number 1. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 1 team selection video. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a mess because I have absolutely no idea what I want to do with my team. It's not like we haven't had a long preseason to decide these things, but we always panic towards the end because we are FPL managers and that's what we do. If you have still enjoyed today's video and you've got some use out of it, please do smash that like button. As I said, let's aim for 3,000 likes on today's video. And if you've not yet subscribed and you've watched to this point, please do consider subscribing. It really does support me. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.